So yes, I have the special occasion glasses on, because this is a special occasion, by God. It's time for a book review. Diana Palmer, Unbridled. Now, I'm going to tell you what she says the book is about. I'm going to tell you what I say the book is about. Then I'm going to give it a rating. And trust me, this is one of those books you want to read. It's very rare that I say that. So you know that this means this book is top notch. She's everything he never wanted, and everything he can't live without. Widowed Texas Ranger and single dad John Ruiz hardened his heart years ago. Day after day he tracks the toughest, roughest criminals in the Lone Star State, which takes him away from his young son. So the last thing John needs is a beautiful woman interfering in his life and getting too close to his little boy. But when John meets her, he's floored by how quickly the sparks fly. Ever since her mother and brother were murdered, Sonny Wesley has devoted her life to helping others. Adorable Tonio Ruiz is just another kid who needs her, or at least that's what she tells herself, until she discovers he is John's son. Such an arrogant and completely irresistible man. But when dangerous forces hit town and Sonny's life comes under fire, John will risk anything to protect the new family he loves, even his own life. Oh, dear Lord in heaven, is this man not just perfect? At first, according to the back of the book. I would use 4 words to describe this book. Romance, of course. Suspense, slightly. Mystery of secrets. And danger with gangs around. I love the way that our characters start out in the book at a Christmas dance. She is so shy and starts off really with a misunderstanding, and he thinks she wants to dance with, well, anyone, just not him. And she can't believe out of all the women at the party, he chose her. They share another strange encounter at a Catholic church, and she came to light candles for her family. He came because, well, his father brought him there as a boy. Sonny and John talk about what each other thought of each other, which both were able to talk about. If this book ever got made into a movie, I could totally see Antonio Banderas playing the character of John Ruiz. Sonny is scared of love. Really, she is. She's immune to it. Sound familiar? And trying not to fall for one sexy Latin Texas Ranger. She can find fault in herself, thinking he is too good for her. John is passionate, kind, and even slightly possessive, but holding a secret from Sonny, his 11-year-old son. John's son, Tonio, becomes friends with Sonny, and Sonny notices that a young boy was being bullied, she pulls out her cell phone to stop it. She acts like she's on the phone with 911, and Rado, the gang leader, leaves with a shout, warning Sonny that he would get her. Tonio takes a shine to Sonny instantly. Her profession as a nurse reminds him as his late mother was a nurse as well. On page 68, Tonio and Sonny are getting to know each other. And it says, Donna, read it. So we're going to go to page 68 to give you all a little bit of depth to this book. And he's telling him, I work here at the children's ward. And he says, is it hard working here? I mean, my cousin works in one of these offices, but you have to be with kids when her face was sad. Yes, we lost a child a few days ago. I cried and cried. We're not supposed to get involved with our patients, but she was so sweet. She swallowed hard and fought tears. He never touched people, not even his dad. But he reached out his hand and grabbed it into hers. Tight. My mother always said that God picked all sorts of people for bouquets. He made little ones and big ones alike. She said he tried to remember that we have to accept that the days of our lives are numbered, and that we have to make the very best of every single one we have. Your mother must have been a very special person, she said, returning the pressure of his hand for a second before she released it to pick up her coat and purse. She was, Tonio said with a sad smile. She was a nurse too, but she didn't work here. She hesitated, seeing the sorrow in his big brown eyes. I'm so sorry, Sonny replied. I know what it is to lose a mother. Her brown eyes were sadder than his. I lost my whole family. He grimaced. I'm sorry too. Life compensates us, my mother used to say. She was a good person too. She glanced at her watch. I'd better get moving before my new supervisor hangs me out the window from a sheet. Nice to have met you, Tonio. Maybe I'll see you again. Same here, and I hope I see you again. She grinned. Bye. Bye. On page 98, we're moving forward, there's a conversation between John and Sonny about the death of his late wife and how John was seeking revenge, but was stopped by fate, and Sonny speaks about revenge. Very wisely. Maria wouldn't wanted revenge, he added quietly. She'd forgiven even the woman who helped kill her. It was the sort of person she was. His face hardened. I'm not like that. I'm vindictive. I hit back. She drew in a long breath. I don't have the heart for revenge, she replied. My mother always said that God uses people to teach us things, that sometimes a person who hurt your feelings did it for a reason. To make you understand an opposite position. She searched his black eyes. She said that people came into your life because you needed them to. Some people make you happy, some make you sad, but there's always a reason. There are no coincidences. He lifted her ponytail and ran his fingers through her long, silky hair. So why are you in my life now, he teased. I was going to ask you why you were in mine, she returned with a pert smile. He shrugged. Maybe we're going to solve some big crime together and make headlines. Huh. She grinned. I would love to solve a big crime. I'll keep my eye out for one, he promised. He looked around. People were probably coming into the parking lot. We should probably get moving before we become a tourist attraction. Oh, on page 127, there's a small joke between John and Sonny. And it's kind of adorable. That's one of the moments that I actually fell in love with John in this book. I have a love-hate relationship with John, myself, in this book. There's some moments that I'm like, oh, he's the most amazing man. Then there's some moments I'm like, get me the cast iron skillet so I can hit this man over the back of the head to make him realize half the pain that he's causing this poor woman. And they're talking about why she's never taken any trips. There are tickets that cost money. Rubia, he calls her. You're hopeless, he teased. I guess I am, she said, but she smiled. I like my life. I don't like change. Shame. What? You don't have anything to jingle in your pockets. You don't like change, he reminded her. She got it, belatedly, and laughed. I honestly had to read that a couple of times myself, being a blonde. So, I guess it is what it is. Page 148, Cal Hollister and Sonny are having a moment. Cal's a friend, a detective, and she wants Cal to help keep her friend Tonio safe from the gang activity, especially Rado. And but Cal is catching on to Sonny's feelings for John. It says read on page 150. Okay. We got to get there first. 148 first. Sonny, he said gently, you're letting life go by without even trying to join in. You can't even live in the past. It won't matter. He added firmly, you think it will, but it won't. Not to a man who cares for you. She drew in a breath. I'm too much of a coward to want to find out, she said, trying to make a joke out of it. John is really just a friend. I like him a lot, but it's not a man-woman thing. If you say so. Okay, when do you want me to show up? Because they're going to this party together, which gives the wrong idea to one Mr. John Ruiz, who jumps to conclusions. And let's just say a little fight's going to happen here. So we're going to move over to page 150. And Cal's trying to tell her to not be so judgmental about Tonio. It says, nice kid, Hollister said. Very nice. It's a shame that he doesn't get more attention at home. His mother's been dead for some time, I guess. His father buried himself in work and just sort of forgot that his son might need him. Don't be judgmental, Hollister chided. You've only had one side of the story. There's always two. I guess there are. He's just such a sweet kid. I feel sorry for him. He has a relative who works in the hospital, but I have no idea who it is. It's a very big hospital. I only know my own ward. Secret about his family, is he? Very. He may have reason for it, one he doesn't want to tell you. I got that impression, she confided. Well, we'll try again next week, because Cal's wanting Tonio to open up so they can pin Ratto to the wall for all the crimes that Ratto has committed. It's such a good book. Okay. 165. Okay. What are we doing on 165? They're discussing her past and why she's so self-conscious, if you will. And of course, she's telling him about how she has a scar, and she thinks that the scar kept the boy away that she had a very bad date with. And he's just like going, oh, she laughed at him self-consciously. Well, anyway, now you know why I need to keep to myself. I have a job that makes me feel needed. I'm happy in that way. And you don't ever have to worry about being rejected again. Ever again. She stared at him blankly. Idiot, he smiled, tracing her lips with one forefinger. And this time I mean you. Get in a truck. She let him lift her up into it. She felt confused. It's not a truck. It's sort of a truck. Now fasten your seatbelt. So we're moving on. It says read to 166. Okay, 168. Johnny and Sonny are discussing Cal and his possessiveness takes over. John's possessiveness takes over. I always think that there's something hot about, a guy going like, you are mine and no one else is going to have you, but not to the point that, he would beat her up or anything. Not that John beats her up. Just saying that it's good to be possessive, just not overly possessive. Okay. I suppose he's all right as long as he stays away from you. Her expression betrayed her surprise. Think I'm joking? His free hand felt for hers and tangled with it. I don't want to get involved with you, he added shortly. This is what ticks me off about dear John here. He's always quick to remind her, I don't want to get involved, but I like you. It could lead to love. And it's like, where's that cast iron skillet? I want to use it on the back of this man's head so bad so he could see those little birdies flying around and maybe knock some sense into him. So anyway, then why are you holding my hand? She asked with exasperated humor. My hand's cold. She burst out laughing. His hand was warmer than hers. He glanced at her and grinned. That's better. We're getting more morose. I see. You don't. He drew in a long breath. I've got complications, lots of them. I haven't been serious about a woman since my wife died, and I can't get serious again. He glared at her again. I'd like to, but it's just not possible. Not yet. See, this is where open and honest communication needs to take place. But honestly, they'd both avoid it. They're scared to fall in love. They're kind of immune to it. And that is kind of the theme throughout the whole book. That's what makes it gel so well throughout the book that it eventually, you'll have to read the book. Okay, so that was page 168. So where we go from here? Oh, page 205. Father Eduardo and John are discussing the gang, and the priest speaks of divine connections. Okay. Divine connections, the priest agreed, smiling. I do what I can for a congregation that defines the word poor, he added. He shook his head. It never ceases to amaze me that in a country of such plenty there are so many in need. We spend billions of dollars developing weapons that can never be used, biological and otherwise. What I could do here with just a fraction of that, he said sadly. I contacted a group of wealthy patrons and got them to provide clothing for a family of 8 whose father just lost his job. They found him another one, he smiled. I believe in angels. Some don't have wings. We have good people here in this city, John agreed. It's amazing John agrees to that. Anyway, page 228, John and his son Tonio are sitting down for dinner, and they're discussing bullies and at school. And so we're going to read that page here. He says, stand up to him, his father advised quietly. Bullies are full of hot air. Confrontation deflates them. He'd fight me. John raised an eyebrow. Tonio, if he hits you, he's expelled. That's the rule. Just make sure you don't hit him first. I won't. He looked up. His father was so strong, and he was like a sturdy oak tree, always tall and straight and unafraid. How do you learn not to be scared of things? Tonio asked him. You never learn that, John said. There are always going to be things, people, situations that frighten you. Courage is doing what you must in spite of the fear. People who tell you they've never felt fear are lying, Tonio, he added with a smile. I feel it all the time, any time I'm face to face with criminals, but I do my job. Tonio just nodded. It was easy to say it, hard to do it. He wished he could help his friend. Okay. Page 239. John is recalling the first moment he had danced with Miss Sunny, and that was probably about the most sexiest part, I think, of... Well, I love his sense of humor, so we'll go there. I like John's sense of humor. It's very, not dark, but yet it's enlightening. But he's telling her right now that he remembers the first time that they danced together, and that part is so adorable, so we'll go there. I love dancing. Me too, he glanced at her with the wicked black eyes. I still remember our first dance. She flushed. I felt so bad. He laughed. You'll never know how flattered I was when my cousin mentioned what you said. He didn't mention that he was feeling really down when she rejected him. One of the nurses he knew had told him what Sunny said, and it had lightened his heart incredibly. Strange to feel so deeply about the opinion of a woman he'd just met. You must know that you're gorgeous, she said shyly. He raised an eyebrow. I'm not, but I'm very glad that you see me that way, he added. You fill my heart. Her breath caught because his voice was so low and soft and full of feeling. I wish things were different, he said grimly. These men, they always say, I love you, but then they have a way of taking it back. And it makes me want to go get a cast iron skillet and hit him over the head. Sorry. So then, we move to I'm going to talk here a minute. John is spending a lot of time away from his son, whether it's at work or with Sunny. And on page 265, where his son is enlightening him about the woman he's met that he spends time with, he says, those woman I know asked me if I did it just to get your attention. He lowered his eyes, blind to his father's sudden flush. I don't know. Maybe I did, he shrugged. The movie was nice. Thanks, I'm going to bed. This is where he should be the father that he is and ask more questions about this woman who's older and he goes to for advice. But does John do that? No. He goes back to work. The man irritates me sometimes. Okay. So we're on page 269. It says... Okay. Now this is where it hits John. John worried about the problem of the Lopez's and his son all the way to the Sunny's apartment. He couldn't believe that he'd been so preoccupied that he hadn't realized that David Lopez with his broken arm was the same David Lopez whose son's best friend. He was working too hard, putting in too much overtime that he neglected his son. Amazing. You realize that after you've been working, you've been neglecting the one thing you shouldn't be neglecting. And basically, that the friend David, who got his arm broke by Rado and that gang, was in fact the same David who played video games with his son Tonio. Now, Tonio has a history with his dad of disapproving the women that his father dates, so much so that he ran away from home when he brought home the first woman after his mom's death. His father tried to date, so John broke things off with Sunny. Sunny goes on a quote-unquote date, and what's the reason for the quote around the date? Because things aren't always as they seem. John accuses Sunny of lying and dating Cal, and Sunny is like, what does it matter? You don't want me anyway, and someone else does. Because the reason he didn't want her was because he was afraid if he said he did, then Tonio would run away from home. Because this is a miscommunication. Tonio and John don't realize that the same woman, the one that John loves, the one that Tonio goes to talk about his day-to-day life with, is the same woman, but they don't communicate. See what I'm talking about? It's communication is the key here. Okay, so John lets Sunny know what they shared was nice, but not worth giving up his freedom. He couldn't believe he risked losing his son for someone who was a faithless flirt. And on 3/13, he thought he saw Sunny. And it wasn't her. He ground his teeth together and drove on. He missed her so much, like losing an arm. If only he hadn't jumped to conclusions and shot his mouth off. Page 316. Sunny informs Tonio that she's thinking about leaving, but she'd stay in contact with Tonio. And I like what she says here, if I can get to it. Don't worry so, she said. We don't control anything, really. Life just happens, you know. He sighed. I guess it does. So then John visits Sunny only to find out her lying on the floor with a syringe in her arm, and it became a life or death situation. He calls 911, which saves her life. Cal and Sunny, and Sunny are chit-chatting about John on page 342. Men go a little crazy when they get jealous of another man, he said. Sometimes they lie to save their pride. She was certain that John didn't. He wasn't the type. I think he meant every word of it, she said quietly. He's gorgeous, you know. He could have any beautiful woman he wanted. Why would he want to be with somebody as plain as me? Sonny, he chided gently, don't sell yourself short. You're not that plain. Thanks, she replied with a forced laugh. I really did need that. You watch your back until we pick up Rado, he said. He's going up for capital murder. We can connect him to Melinda McCarthy's murder, and I think we can. We've got some of his people pleading to turn the state's evidence into return for lessened sentences, and trace the drug that he used on you to a pharmaceutical company that had dealings with a rogue DEA agent that just picked him up. Things are happening pretty fast rate. Rado has nothing to lose now. I'll be careful, she promised. Thanks for the information. You're welcome. Tell your young friend I'd be proud of him to have a son like him, he added. My wife was sterile and we never had a child. I'm so sorry for your loss, she said, recalling that his wife died some years ago. It wasn't that sort of marriage, he said curtly. I just came home from overseas and I was loaded. She loved money. That's all she wanted from me. That must have been a painful thing to live with. Painful, he agreed. He drew in a breath, but I had ulterior motives too. I married her to get even with a woman who loved me. He bit off the words as if they were most painful. More fool me. You never know people from a distance. Oh. So we're going to move over to page 350 where Tonio and John are chatting about Sunny. She's so sad lately. She almost never smiles. It wasn't like before. She was so happy that she almost glowed like you, he added. I'm so sorry that I messed things up. If I'd known that Sunny was the Sunny that If I'd known it was Sunny you were seeing, I'd never been over the moon. I would have been over the moon. It was my fault. It's not, John said gently. You don't know, and it wasn't your fault. It was mine. I jumped to conclusions, said a lot of hurtful things that she can't forget. She thinks she's plain, Tonio replied, but she's not. She's beautiful. I take her roses, he added with a grin. She loves yellow ones. His eyebrows arched. Maybe if you took her yellow roses, she'd forgive you. Think so, he laughed. I'm afraid it will take more than roses, but I'll try. I promise I'll try. Okay, Dad, Tonio finished his milk. I better get on my homework. That was surprising. He usually had to nag him about it. Tonio saw his father's expression. A mischievous look flared on his face. I really want to get on that soccer team. Remember what you promised? I get my grades up. You'd buy me a nice uniform? John laughed heartily. I meant it, too. He cocked his head. Someday you and I will have a talk about how things really are here. What things? Not now. Later. Okay. Now, what questions I want to leave you with? Burning questions. What secret does Sunny have from John and Tonio? Is Tonio, which is the son of John, willing to really let Sunny be with John? Is it too late for John and Sunny? Will Cal and Sunny make a couple instead of John? Will Sunny take a job and leave the area? Will Rado kill Sunny or Tonio? And the only way to find out who Sunny wound up with, and what secrets are kept, and what romances are burning hot, is to read this amazing Unbridled book by Diana Palmer, which gets a 10. I know, right? It's rare that any book gets a 10 from me, but this book gets a 10. That tells you pick this book up and read it. You won't regret it. Thank you for joining me tonight. I've got a workout to go get in. Love you all. till I see you again. I know that I have been not feeling very well today. My stomach's been upset. I think maybe it's nerves. A lot of things on my plate. I'm always a planner, trying to plan ahead. And I'm just, of course, asking myself these adoption questions and trying to forge ahead and see how I'm going to handle that as well, which I believe I am the perfect candidate, but we'll just have to see. And I'm not taking it lightly. I'm moving forward with it. So that's final, and I will see you later.